Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. First question comes from the Warlock in my D&D game. Hey man, how you doing? Anyway, my friend is asking, hey Crispy, how do you feel about the new 2024 D&D 5th edition player handbook? Well, I think it's neat. Is it something I'm dying to buy? No. I think there's a lot of really cool changes in the book. Some things I agree with, some things I disagree with, but for the most part, I think that these are improvements to the game. However, I do not think these are notable enough improvements that I'm going out of my way to purchase this book ASAP as soon as possible. Like, yeah, they're really cool changes. Many of these changes are things that I wanted to do for a while, but here's the thing about Dungeons & Dragons. A lot of the changes that I want made to the game, I can just do myself, and I have done myself in the past. Is it cool that these things are now official material? Yeah, I think that's neat as hell. And for brand new people, I would say, like, buy the new handbook instead of the old handbook. But if you already have a handbook, you can pretty much just retroactively make these changes yourself without needing to buy an entirely new book. A lot of these features are really cool. And generally speaking, if you want to buy a D&D book, unless something major happens and something changes, I think I'd recommend the new stuff rather than the old stuff. But as somebody who has never really used any D&D books before and just uses online materials of the stuff I have in my head, I can just add these changes into my headspace and use them in my game without buying the book. As I've said countless times, my biggest issue with Dungeons & Dragons has always been the monsters, and obviously the player's handbook is doing nothing to help with that issue because it's not supposed to. This is the player's handbook. I'm going to wait for the monster manual because if that gives me a lot of really interesting monsters with more interesting abilities to work with, similar to Flea Mortals, then perfect. I think I'll absolutely be picking that up because while Flea Mortals is an amazing book, it is only one book. I have been creating my own homebrew monsters in the style of Flea Mortals, but if official content creates a similar vibe at least, more diverse monsters with more interesting abilities than just the 1000th variation of multi-attack, alright, color me interested. I'm also curious what the DM's guide is gonna look like. Like, the player's handbook looks exactly how I'd expect a new player's handbook to look, but the DM's guide's been hyped up as a big new thing, and I'm just kind of curious what it's gonna be. I'm really interested to see about the magic item list, because I honestly think, for the most part, a lot of the magic items in the original DMG are pretty forgettable, so I'm wondering how a revamped magic item list will look like. Also, if the guide does more to expand on how to world build a D&D setting, I think that would be really useful as a guy who's currently world building a D&D setting. That's also a book I'm really interested in. But yeah, there you go. I'm more interested in the two other books as somebody who is primarily a dungeon master, but the player's handbook stuff looks neat. It's not something I'm dying for, but I don't hate what I see. Here's a question. Where can I get awesome magic items for my D&D game? Feels like there's nowhere for me to go. Well, this week's videos are sponsored by Dungeon Deck and their new Kickstarter, Falco's Vault of Wonders. There are so many places to get unique magic items in Dungeons & Dragons, but Dungeon Deck takes things to a whole new level. First and foremost, they actually play tested all these cards amongst the community. You're not going to get something underpowered or overpowered to an extreme degree. Everything here has been play tested to ensure it fits into your game. But hey, not to say there isn't some crazy items, especially with the new Unity mechanic, allowing you to further bond with items like the artifact known as the Twilight Warden to protect your friends with blinding light. I cannot stress enough that in Dungeon Decks, from the most simple uncommon item to the most legendary artifact, every item tells a story. Each one can serve as the catalyst for an entire quest, or be characters all on their own. Put simply, if you're tired of +1 longswords, Dungeon Decks, it's the clear way to go. If you guys are interested, then you can head down into the description down below or head to the pinned comment so you can pick up the amazing items from the Vault of Wonders on Kickstarter. Thank you so much to Dungeon Deck for sponsoring today's video. As always, supporting our sponsors does support us. And without further ado, I'm going to get back to gaming so that we can get back to the video. Question from Sellesion. You said you were writing a patch for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition for your homebrew game. I know you're not going to share it for the internet, but how's it going? Does the new player's handbook /5.5 make any effect on it at all? Well, this is a very apt question considering what I just talked about. So yes, I have my own little patch notes for D&D, and these are patch notes. I'm not making a whole homebrew system. It's just small little things like I changed up backgrounds to have skill proficiencies in them. I changed up races to have their own unique abilities standardized across all races. Those are the kind of things that I am doing. And obviously all of this also fits into the lore of my homebrew world. So for example, backgrounds are not just backgrounds. If you want to pick a more specific background, you can pick a faction that exists in my homebrew world. Obviously, all of this is a lot of work to do as one person, but honestly, like, these are small things in the grand scheme of what a game looks like. Like, my players actually use their new racial features and background features basically all the time. I've also made inspiration, or fortune as I call it, a more prominent thing in my game. So yeah, that's obviously something that my players are going to use all the time because giving a reroll to somebody is kind of a big deal. But at the end of the day, these are not major adjustments. I'm not rewriting the wheel here when it comes to D&D. I'm just making small changes to things that I think are underdeveloped. Now, the big thing that's different in my games is the monsters. If you watch my actual play, you know that I use Flea Mortals, which has monsters that are much different from the base D&D monster manual. Obviously, I didn't write Flea Mortals, but I did create a lot of the monsters that my players fight. Basically, every boss that my players come up against, whether it be in my 10th Tomb actual play or in my homebrew game, all those bosses are designed by me. Is that always a good thing? No, I am not a professional game designer. I am trying my best, but sometimes things just don't work out in actual play as they do in my brain space. Like in the 10th Tomb, there is a rival party that the player character were fighting that were supposed to have a lot more synergy between themselves. Like they were supposed to have a lot more abilities that synergize, but frankly, that kind of fell apart because I was just stressed out while running that game and wasn't thinking about the synergies and just doing very simple abilities rather than comboing abilities together like I had intended. That kind of thing is the kind of thing you don't think about when you're designing a stat sheet. But yeah, back to your actual question, my patch is going very well. Right now, I'm not really working on any game mechanic, game design stuff because I don't need to. A lot of the stuff that I wanted to change, like backgrounds or racial options, those are things that are only important for character creation. My characters have been made, so I'm done. I don't really need to work on anything else right now. It's not an urgent project, so I'm not really expanding out the list of homebrew races I'm creating or my list of homebrew backgrounds because, again, I don't need to yet. But if anyone were to die or if we were to start like a one-shot again, then yeah, I'd start expanding it out. But right now, I'm more focused on my lore because that's something that I need to develop for both my actual play and my home game. So yeah, there you go. Question from TTRPGSarvis. It often gets asked what someone's favorite character they've ever played was. What's your least favorite character you've ever played? Someone you probably wouldn't have played in hindsight. Ooh, I really like this question. And I have to say, I don't really regret any of the player characters that I've created. Like, I like all my player characters. I like Caroline. I like Reyna, my bard, who you haven't seen yet, but hopefully one day you will see. Even characters for campaigns and shows that haven't aged the best in my mind, I don't really regret playing. Like, I still think the character was fine, it's just the campaign itself has aged poorly when I think back to it. In terms of NPCs that I've regretted, well, you can see one. I really regret how I played Crawford Cyrillish in both Shadow over Karakonos and Crown of Deceit. If you're unaware, these are the two D&D podcasts that I did before the 10th Tomb. It was a different era. And Crawford Cyrillish is the leader of the collective, and I did not play him well. I did not know what to do with this character. He was just a creepy schemer type guy, which I don't think fully encapsulates what kind of character he is, because he's not an evil character, but the way I played him made him seem really, really evil. Also, in those actual plays, I didn't have any fun playing Crawford. When I played Crawford in my home games, I was having a great time, but in the actual plays, I felt Crawford didn't really meld with the cast as well as he did in my home game. Kalia Solfero is different. She also comes from my home game, but she melded with the cast so much better, so I actually had so much fun playing as her rather than Crawford. Another, and this is a really stupid thing, but it is something that I think about sometimes and regret. But yeah, here we go. Crawford and Kalia are both supposed to be Asian characters, a fact that is not communicated in the show or in any of the art. When I first got art of Kalia, straight up didn't correct the artist, and the reason was because I felt awkward, I felt weird, I felt like changing her ethnicity would be too big an edit, and I didn't want to be rude, and I don't know, I was being stupid, but it did really bother me, especially since obviously Crawford and Kalia don't have very quote-unquote Asian-sounding names, which is on purpose, by the way. I also don't have a very quote-unquote Asian-sounding name, the beauty of immigration and mixing cultures, but Kalia is supposed to be mixed race. Her mom is from Kerkonos, but her dad is from elsewhere, hence why she has a name that doesn't really fit with local Kerkonan culture, because Kerkonos is based on Hong Kong. And again, that's a fact I just didn't communicate very well, because people very quickly built this Victorian London style aesthetic for Kerkonos, and that isn't what I had in mind. But again, I didn't want to correct people, and that's something I do look back on with a lot of regret. Now, this is something I'm doing a bit of a better job mending in my new show. I make the cultural inspirations a lot more plain. This is with the music, the reference images, the naming conventions of the characters. I tried my best to actually communicate where I was taking inspiration from. But yeah, I know that wasn't really a character thing, that was more of a place thing, but I don't know, it's adjacent. But yeah, there you go. Those are characters that I didn't do a good job playing, or regretted playing, or messed up in some way. Question from Malfolium. Hey Crispy, just wanted to ask, what do you use to play the sound effects and music in your games? If I ever want to be a DM one day, I want to be able to do that as well. I've talked about this program so many times, but I use something called Kenku. Kenku FM is one of the coolest things ever. It's essentially a program where you can upload sound effects, upload music, organize them into folders, and then play them in your Discord server. The sync is basically perfect, so if I want to sync up a description to music, they will hear the description be synced up to the music. I find that programs like Foundry, the sync isn't perfect. Like, there's gonna be like a 5-second delay, whereas in Kenku, the delay is literally milliseconds. It's amazing. The only problem with Kenku is you need to upload the sound effects, but of course, that does let you use your own sound effects in the game, and beyond that, Kenku is pay what you want. You can get it for free if you want to, though I recommend paying the dev team because they did an amazing job. It's not like Sirenscape, where you need to pay a monthly frickin' subscription in order to use a GUI that, in my opinion, is extremely primitive, with sound effects that, in my opinion, again, are hit and miss. Some of the sound effects from Sirenscape I really like, some of them I would want changed, but luckily with Kenku FM, I have complete control over that. And on top of all that, you don't even need to upload music into Kenku FM if you really don't want to, because you can also just play YouTube through Kenku FM. I have premium, so I don't know if it plays ads if you don't have premium, but anyway, yeah, I guess that's something you need to worry about. But the point is that, yes, Kenku can absolutely play YouTube through the speakers, and it is awesome. Just playing a YouTube video directly into the call. Hell, me and my friends just use Kenku FM in general. It's just a great, awesome program to use for anything. I love it. Oh, and on top of all that, Kenku doesn't need to be played in the Discord call. If you're playing in person, Kenku can be played right out of your speakers. If anything, it probably works better that way, because sometimes Kenku, it does unfortunately disconnect from Discord every now and then. And by every now and then, I mean it literally happens once a year, I think? It does not break that often. It is usually a premium package I cannot recommend enough. Again, the only problem is you gotta do a lot of work yourself if you want to properly organize. I have spent a lot of hours organizing all the sound effects, and no, I'm not going to be giving out the sound effects that I use in my D&D game. They are not mine to give out, hence why I'm not going to do it. But if Kenku falls apart and doesn't work, my backup is always something called Watch Together. This is a free website. You can play music through it. You can create your own playlists through it. You can create a queue with it. It's a nice website. It can't do sound effects, obviously, but if you want to do just music right off the rip, then boom, you have Watch Together as well. Question from DemonHeart13. Pew, why are you my aesthetic goals and how do I achieve them? Okay, well, step 1, be Asian. Step 2, be debatably unhealthily fit. Okay, I'm kidding. Don't do that. Step 3, be somewhat androgynous. Step 4, lipstick nail polish. Step 5, flannel or jean jacket. Boom, the crispy aesthetic. Also, make sure to have fringes. That too. Question from nolanroran. Please show the Lego collection. Oh, wow. if you insist upon it. Welcome to my bedroom where I keep most of my Lego. Ooh. So we'll start up here. These are all the sets I have floating up in the air. We got some Ninjago, we got lots of Star Wars, we even got some Mega Bloks World of Warcraft there with Deathwing. Next up, we've got our UCS X-Wing. This was a gift. I was never really interested in UCS because I really like minifig style stuff or minifig scale stuff, but this is just objectively, it's great. I thought the engines were too big when I was looking at the box, but here in person, it's such a good looking build. I love this thing. Then moving over, we got a little Clone Wars battle. We got some clones up here, droids down here, real nice. Got some clones like sniping, cool stuff. We got our Sonic the Hedgehog build here, Lego Ideas, Ninjago, real nice here. This is a misc shelf. This is not anything particularly special. This is just where I put stuff I don't have any other place for. I'll probably part some of these down when I actually have something to put here. We've got some power miners, old school combo build. You've got like a little Star Wars thing here. We've got Moria, Lord of the Rings. We've got Minecraft, lots of Minecraft extending out to the nether. We've got more Star Wars with like a little Clone Trooper evolution thing here. Yellow Submarine, crappy Rivendell, which transitions nicely into gorgeous Rivendell. Oh my god, this build is just amazing. I love it, love it, love it. This is just the stuff I keep in my bedroom. I've got more stuff in other rooms, such as my Ninjago City and my TIE Fighter collection, but that's what I got time for right now. Question from anonymous individual. First of all, I've been a fan for years, and it's awesome to see how far this channel has grown. Thank you, by the way. Second, do you know how to make descriptions of your world and scenery feel more natural and evocative? Mine always come across as flat or worse, forced. First and foremost, always describe things that actually matter. Bring attention to things that your players are going to be interested in. So for example, I only really get deep in the weeds of description when it's, for example, a new major location. Like with my party entering the city of Orlamar, I had a paragraph ready to describe the scenery. Now, in terms of describing the scenery itself, how do I do that? I'm gonna be real with you, man. I am not so great at that. If you're unaware of my background, it's in journalism and mass communications, which, you know, when you're writing a piece, you're supposed to be very straightforward. You're supposed to make things as easy as possible to read, and that means not getting too flowery, and that means that I don't have a lot of practice with being flowery and evocative. Frankly, even before my education, I wasn't that good of an author, and after, I think I'm a good author for some things, but definitely not for things that matter for Dungeons & Dragons, hence why you don't see me releasing any books. I just don't know how to write them, dude. I guess my biggest piece of advice is do your descriptions before you actually start the session. Like, don't improv them. If I was just improvising my descriptions, I'd say, oh, there's some trees and they're tall and be very vague. But if you want to actually do a lengthy description that is evocative, it's helpful to, you know, write it out in advance. Give yourself a little something to work with. I really like starting with the big picture and then narrowing it down. So, for example, starting with just the general outline of the city, what the buildings are made of, then narrowing it down to what they see on the street, then narrowing it down further to what someone is doing on the street, you know, going down and down into details to draw the player's interest into something specific. Even better, if you draw interest specifically to something your players need to do, like, for example, narrowing down to the quest giver. Hope that helps you, man. It's not my strong suit, but there you go. Whew, that's a long one, but that's also a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our 10th Tomb Actual Play. We are wrapping up the show next week. It's linked in the cards. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. Make your own fate. To reference the game I'm playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you all next time. Farewell.